Primetime returns to a subject you know we care a lot about. Good, safe daycare for children. It turns out the most popular child care in America right now is not the formal daycare center, but home care. Putting your children in someone else's home because it seems warmer, more like family, and often it's right in the neighborhood. And this is what every parent hopes it is, a stimulating, loving environment, inspected and regulated by the state, where a small group of about 6 children receive attentive, safe care. And there are good homes, like this one. But because so many parents assume that the state license assures quality care, we undertook a 7-month investigation. And what we found was so serious, we decided to place ABC staffers inside some homes, posing as young teenage children with special needs who could not care for themselves, so that they and their hidden cameras could show us some of what really goes on. In a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota, 2 houses sit side by side, both offering parents the advantages of home-based daycare for children. In the house on the left, Connie Johnson has made a name for herself as a leader in family home care. She even trains other providers, sharing her 23 years of experience.
We paint the snow with food coloring, and we just have a ball.
When we visited undercover as parents, she gave us an impressive hour-and-a-half presentation, showed her clippings, and, because development is important, she said, she described the daily activities.
Oh, that was today's activity. Tomorrow we're doing puff flowers, and that's a different kind of painting.
But there's a problem. We learned of a history of complaints against Connie Johnson. Complaints that included neglect and taking in an illegal number of children. And sure enough, during our investigation, she had as many as 16 at a time, including 4 babies and toddlers, a clear violation. So we placed an ABC staffer in the home with a hidden camera.
Well, you guys have fun. I'm going to run upstairs and do the dirty dishes.
We wondered how, with so many children, Johnson could ever engage them in all those activities she promised. It turns out she didn't. During the 3 days we were there, the only organized activity we saw was one 9-minute story.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Every day, Connie would put the kids outside to play while she sat a good distance away from them on the phone, sometimes for as long as an hour and a half. One time, she even left to go inside.
My phone just died. I have to go put a new battery in it.
And we remembered something she told us during our parental visit about time out, sitting alone as a form of discipline.
And never, in my estimation, over 2 minutes. 2 minutes to a child is an eternity, period.
Yeah. Yet undercover, we saw this boy sit in timeout almost 30 minutes while she talked on the phone. And what about the babies? Even though she had told us that she brought the babies out to crawl around, we remembered complaints submitted to the state, alleging that she left the babies unattended for hours at a time. And each of the 3 days we were there, the babies were left in their cribs all morning, including when she went outside with the older kids. On this day at lunchtime, we heard them crying and asked if we could look in on them. There they were, awake and upset. The room smelled. Connie acknowledged the diapers were dirty, but she had 10 other children waiting to eat, so she closed the door and went back to the kitchen. And then after lunch, she cleaned the kitchen, did the laundry, and read her mail before returning to the babies 3 hours later. For this entire day, the babies never left their cribs, nor did she take them out to play or change their diapers until she set them out for the parents' arrival. Even then, she didn't always monitor the babies. Look at the one on the left. So, if there are too many children in Connie Johnson's house, what about the house next door, where Sherry Grunwald has been caring for children for 7 years? When Primetime, posing as parents, asked about how many children she watched, it sounded like just a few.
So you have, what, about 5, 6 kids here? Or?
There's normally 7 or so here during the day. Some days there might be 1 less or 1 more, whatever.
Right.
And something else that would reassure any parent. A state inspector showed up for a surprise visit. Though Sherry was so solicitous of the children, she told the inspector it wasn't a good time.
I know it'd really be better. I got cookies in the oven.
So the inspector agreed to come back another day. But once again, we were already inside. Here, Sherry is on the phone to a friend telling her about the inspector and the close call.
I know I won't get by with that again.
Get by with what? The fact is, Sherry wasn't caring for 7 or 8 children. We repeatedly observed her taking in 16 to 22 children to care for on her own. Children frequently left to fend for themselves. An older child decides to drag the baby around like a rag doll. Another child falls on the same baby. Sherry checks in on them now and then and even stops to play for a time. But with so much to do and babies to look after, she goes back upstairs, leaving them on their own again. And something else we noticed about the day was the number of times Sherry lost her temper.
Brianna, shut your mouth.
She resorted to threats of spanking and...
Would you like soap in your mouth?
Or she just erupted with very little provocation. Is this girl yelling? Yet this is Sherry's reaction.
You yell at me again, young lady, and you'll be on timeout for the rest of the week. Do you understand? There's ways of responding, and then there's ways of not responding. You might get to yell at your mom and dad at home, but you don't yell at me here. Do you understand?
Sherry put kids in timeout 11 to 13 times that day.
What part of timeout can't you even understand?
Some were in for up to an hour. Some were very young.
Rebecca, you will be in a playpen after nap. You will not go outside today.
The littlest girl in the room, Rebecca, seems particularly annoying to Sherry, even when she's only trying to play with a blanket. And take a look where Sherry sometimes puts toddlers. Rebecca was put there for punishment. A dimly lit storage room confined to a playpen with the door shut. A little boy told us it can be scary.
The beast in there.
By the end of the day, Sherry tells a friend on the phone she's at wit's end because of all the kids and the inspector at the door.
I'm to the point right now that I'm so sick of my parents. I'm so sick of these kids that I almost said, hey, come in, knock yourself out. Count, look in closets.
She also tells her friend she'll have to hide some of the kids the next time the inspector comes.
I think I can put a couple of these I just hope it's not first thing in the morning. Because then I'm really SOL.
When you've got that many children, you have to look at them as a herd, as a litter, you can't think of them as individuals in this.
Ellen Galensky is a national policy advisor on child care issues. Her organization issued a report examining 226 providers, outsiders, and relatives in 3 states.
We found that 9% of the children were in child care arrangements in which they were growing and learning, in which they were really good for the children.
9%?
9%.
And how many did you find were really potentially harmful to the child?
35%.
Harmful emotionally, sometimes even physically.
When the pie was over.
This is Matthew Wildrick. It was his first day in the care of a registered family home provider in Houston, Texas. His mother, Leslie, was only going to leave him for a few hours.
I remember very distinctly saying to David as we drove away, I don't want to leave him. I want to go back. I want to go get him.
Okay, and we're going to give it CPR now.
In just a matter of hours, it happened. Matthew's mother said the caregiver had a helper who was gone that day, and she was distracted by the other children. She fed Matthew a bottle and laid him on his back.
And he aspirated formula into his lungs.
His mother says the caregiver was so busy she didn't check on Matthew for an estimated 45 minutes. He died several days later. He was only 10 weeks old. Some experts estimate nationwide more children are seriously injured in family home care than in larger daycare centers. In Colorado, Norma McKinnon knows the stress of a lot of little kids can lead to a lethal explosion. Her daughter Jeanette was physically abused when she was 4.5 months old. She's brain damaged.
The lawyer's defense seems to be that the parent should have known better.
I checked out her license. I visibly saw her file. I called other parents. I stayed there the whole first day with my son.
Sherry Robertson started the support group Parents Against Child Abuse after her experience in home care with 10-month-old Brian.
She had that day more kids than she was allowed by law. Brian didn't want to be there. He was teething, and I think she flipped out, picked him up by his shoulders, and shook him. Just shook him.
Doctors believe the woman shook Brian so long, so hard, that his injuries were the equivalent of falling out of a 2-story building onto cement. Brian was in a coma for 8 days and still suffers from partial paralysis and blindness and learning disabilities. Robertson, who lives in California, says don't be fooled into thinking that state licenses or inspectors really control the number of children inside. Which brings us back to the inspectors in Minnesota, like the one who left Sherry Grunwald's house not knowing there were too many kids inside. We decided to go see the man in charge of home care inspections in Minneapolis. His name is Dr. David Sanders.
What good is an inspection if you can just say, I'm sorry, I'm making cookies. You can't come in right now.
The kind of information that you're presenting to me is the kind of information that I would want to have come in here as a child abuse or neglect report.
Sanders says he has to follow policy, and by policy, inspectors can't force their way in. But what about complaints like those about Connie Johnson? When we asked as parents to see her file, we were given an incomplete summary. They didn't even tell us they had once put her on a year's probation.
Are you a parent?
I am a parent.
As a parent, though, if you discovered you had been sending your child to a facility which had dozens of complaints in the file, wouldn't you be mad as hell?
If I were in that kind of circumstance and there was information out there that I didn't have, I do think that that's terribly unfortunate, and parents need to have as much as they can in making that kind of decision.
And when we went back and knocked on Sherry Grunwald's door, she told us that on its own the state had cited her for too many children. Then she admitted she was still over the limit, but said now she'd stop.
You're saying today will be the last day you're over the limit?
Absolutely. You can come out here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, from here on in.
But you knew what you were doing then, right?
I did, and you know, you think you're helping out people, and you think you're, yes, I did, and you know, you really, it's hard to explain.
And we also stopped next door to see Connie Johnson, who had, well, a different response.
Because we've heard that once again, you have too many children that you're taking care of in daycare. How many children do you have today?
That day, she, too, was again over the legal limit. You know, the number of children is not the only important thing in child care that can be missed by the state. What about the background of the child care provider? We decided to see what would happen when we traveled to a different part of the country and decided to try to get a child care license. To show you what we mean, we submitted some candidates to be child care providers.
Hey, now, have a criminal check on this, please.
We're in South Carolina, and in less than a minute, this man passed the criminal check.
Thank you.
And soon afterwards, he handed in his application. The state checked his references, but the calls took only about 30 seconds with questions like, what's his personality like? Is he clean around the house? And so he got his provisional license to care for up to 6 children, even though, in another state, this man had been caught and convicted of dealing drugs. And a woman we submitted to be a caregiver also passed the criminal check and received a provisional license. Her crime? Manslaughter. She had killed her newborn baby. We're told South Carolina is about to toughen its criminal checks, but what about a state like Oregon, which claims to cross-reference criminal records state to state? Well, we got 3 felons registered there too. And something else, no one checked the safety of our locations. In Oregon, we were approved for home care at a mailbox, a railroad crossing, and a median strip. When we come back, this daycare home was supposed to be shut down by the state. Just wait until you see what happened when our hidden cameras paid a visit. Home care investigation. Just how little you can count on the state for supervision and enforcement became clear to us when we decided to look into the list of dozens of home care providers in Texas who've committed such serious violations that their licenses were revoked. We checked on 28 of them to see what happened afterwards, and guess what? We found 15 of the 28 are still in business.
When we went to see this woman posing as parents, we knew that she had been shut down for watching too many kids.
Your license was the state? Yes, I am.
And she even showed us a certificate right there on the wall. So how did she get the document? Well, we learned that the bureaucracy is so confused that as one office was shutting her down, another renewed her certificate anyway. And what about this woman who said her home was like a registered place, she just didn't have the paper?
And you don't need to have that. You don't have to have that.
But under the law, she did need a license. She was watching 9 children. And what she didn't tell us was that she had been shut down for abuse, for severely bruising a child, which she denies. And there's this man, Jamie Arencia in Houston. After his license was revoked, he found a way around the system. He got a new license in the name of his son. But our undercover staffer who posed as a child noted that the son was rarely there, and Jamie told us he runs things.
Your wife that watches the kids? You do.
And take a look at the areas beyond the one-room parents usually see. A crumbling ceiling. That's not wallpaper on the walls, that's mold. There are electrical wires back where the children go. Bugs in the area where the food was prepared. And food was everywhere, like this cake on the couch. Mr. Arencia even sat on it. And this girl ate food off the dirty floor. And how attentive was Mr. Arencia? Well, when we came back to pick up our child one afternoon, we found the children were taking care of themselves, while Mr. Arencia was in front of the TV, sound asleep. How does an establishment that looks like that get by any inspection?
It's clear that there are numerous violations of our standards just from the little bit of view we had there.
This is Doug Sanders, head of the Texas Department of Protective and Regulatory Services. We also wanted to ask him about another caregiver, one who had fed a 14-month-old baby adult food. The baby choked. Instead of a Heimlich, she tried CPR.
She did not clear the passageway, first of all. She blew the corn and spinach and rice deeper into his lungs.
Jan Wilson's bubbly little boy, Michael, now 6 years old, has massive brain damage.
It's hard because I have to see him like this. It's like when it happened, I took a deep breath in and I have not yet exhaled. That's the best I can describe it.
A judge found his caregiver, Yvonne Sledge, negligent and awarded a $21 million judgment, though there was no insurance and Jan Wilson receives no money. But what had the state concluded about Sledge? Well, state investigators said it was an unfortunate accident and let her keep her license. The state's only sanction against her was for failing to fill out her paperwork.
We err in situations, and I can't say that we didn't err in that one.
And here's something else. Recently, there was a gang-related shooting at Sledge's house. But again, the state noted it in the file and didn't even investigate. What does it mean? If a gang-related shooting is not enough to tell you to be wary, what does it mean?
Yes, I can certainly understand how you or any parent would feel that way.
A number of parents have told us that they assume when they see a state registration or a state license that that means the state is watching over their child.
And we're not.
Sometimes, even when they try to. We found this home in Mineral Wells, Texas, where the owner, Mary Stroud, told us she watches children from 14 different families.
Does she like cartoons or television?
Stroud seemed like a sweet grandmotherly type when we posed as parents. These 2 boys began acting up in front of us. She gently corrected them.
Don't let you stand down, quit running. Don't let her run.
What you don't see about Mary Stroud is that she has been repeatedly cited for unsupervised care and for watching as many as 38 children. The state took away her license in 1988 and since then has taken her to court, fined her, even jailed her to try to keep her from operating illegally. And here's what our undercover camera discovered about Stroud when no parents were looking. Her demeanor changed.
Get in here, nigger. He started it.
Yeah, well, I'm fixed to stop it.
The children ran wild while Stroud put on makeup, read the newspaper, and stayed in the kitchen. Once again, the baby was left alone in a room in her crib all day long. And when those boys fought again, this time...
Shut up! Go today.
Stroud followed the boy up the hallway and looked for something on the shelf. It was a strap.
You don't slam those chairs. You don't get more of that if you do anything else.
It makes me very angry. Makes me very angry to see that the children are having to suffer that way.
A month ago, the state did issue another summons to Stroud, who evaded it by fleeing the state. We found her at her daughter's in Wenatchee, Washington. She told us the state has no business in someone's home. And what if she decides to go into business there? Once again, Sherry Robertson of Parents Against Child Abuse.
Is there any way to cross-reference state to state and see who's done what?
No. And the states don't want to do it.
The people in Texas, as in other parts of the country, who don't want more government intervention, who see child care as basically a family matter, see our attempts to ensure protection of children as an intervention in family matters.
I really think that if you find out that your legislator doesn't vote your way or doesn't vote for the way of the kids, get that person out of there. All it takes is a vote.
Is this the system of a country that cares about children?
No, I don't think we do. We really don't value children in this country. We don't provide the resources, the training, and the financial resources to provide the kind of care that our children need. Our children are at risk.
And in the meantime, the victims and their families struggle with the senselessness of it all, confronting every day the same question: who will give some parents help before it happens again?
They are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world.
After our interview, Doug Sanders did send inspectors to the Texas homes we brought to his attention. The license given to Jamie Orencia's son was taken away, and the state says it is being more vigilant in following up on caregivers whose licenses have been revoked to make sure that they are not back in business. Now, as we've said before, there are things parents can do to take action. Make surprise visits and don't accept excuses about why it's not a good time. Go in anyway. Talk to your children and compare notes with other parents. And now moving on.